Is it possible to have too much responsibility, to take too much responsibility for yourself? Like, one thing that I've been thinking is that the victim mindset, where you believe that you have no control over the outcomes in your life. I wonder whether there's an opposite, where you believe that you have an infinite amount of control over them and you lose faith in your innate ability to just carry you through. I've been thinking a lot about releasing the tiller, which is a Jed McKenna quote. He's talking about the fact that the best way to ride a boat through a storm is to actually release the tiller, and it allows the boat to maneuver best through the swells. And I think that a lot of the time, going back to the imposter syndrome thing that we were talking about, as you start to accumulate more and more competence, the higher level of overthinking, the higher level of neuroticism, the more of an attention to detail that got you from 0 to 50 isn't necessarily the thing that's going to get you from 50 to 100. You know, you had to get across a river and it was bad and difficult. You don't need to carry that boat across ground to then get you across the next one. And I wonder whether the opposite of a victim mentality, where you take responsibility for the things that occur in life, I wonder whether you can overshoot that.
You can, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Dostoevsky said that every man was responsible for everything he did and for everything that everyone else does. Which is kind of an insane statement, but also somewhat, it's true in a certain sense. You do have an indefinite responsibility, and you do have an indefinite capacity to bear that responsibility, but that doesn't mean it can't be crushing. And then I would say the antidote to that is that you're not in this alone. As your responsibilities mount and your opportunities increase, you have to delegate more and more. It's important that you do everything you can, but there's enough for everyone to do. And so you might say, well, the heroic path is one that leads to universal redemption, and that's true. And you might say, well, that's all on you. It's like, it is in a sense, but then the problem that you just described comes up.
Shouldering too much burden.
Well, it can crush you. It can be unsustainable. Right? You can torture yourself for not doing it well enough. And it is up to you, but it's not up to you alone. It's not up to you alone. So you delegate, and you help build people around you so that they're all working in the same direction. It's an effort multiplier in any case. And you make sure that they get credit. Credit credit's good enough. It's not exactly right. The rewards are in accordance with their efforts, and you can distribute that, because there's also a narcissism that can come along with that, which is, well, it's all up to me. And even if you're working in a very competent manner, it can seem that way, but there's plenty of work to go around, and there's plenty of credit where credit is due. And so what you do as you attain more responsibility and opportunity is you delegate more of that, and you do that continually. I mean, one of the roles of a good manager is to make him or herself irrelevant.
Obsolete, yeah.
Yeah, right. So if you're not a good manager, if your company would collapse if you disappeared, that should all be delegated out. And it's not because you're abdicating responsibility, because also what happens is that if you can routinize something and parse it off to someone else, say, here's a little kingdom for you, and it doesn't have to be little, and it's something that can grow, but here's a kingdom for you, well, then you can go off and do the next thing you need to do, which is extremely important. And you might think there's a kingdom, and then it's broken into little kingdoms, and so the farther you are down the hierarchy, the smaller the kingdom you get. But that's only true if you think the world's a zero-sum game, because you could also think of it as a place with an indefinite number of the largest kingdoms possible. And I think, why do we think this is exhaustible in some sense, what we're doing? It doesn't look exhaustible. That's the limits to growth mentality. It's like, economists don't believe in that, because they think, well, no, we can just get more efficient, which we certainly are. We're way more efficient than we once were. And those gains in efficiency, when they're not being interfered with, are increasing at more than an arithmetic rate.
A lot of people will say that you need to do what makes you happy. From a long-term life perspective, yeah, find a job that's going to make you happy in the long term. But that is not the plan to follow for your daily life at all. Because if you do what makes you happy right now, well, a piece of cake will make you happy right now. Or laying in bed for an extra 48 minutes will make you happy right now. So there's lots of things that'll make you happy right now, but in the long run, they don't do anything for you. They make you soft. They make you weak. And in the long run, they will not make you happy in life. So for today, don't do what makes you happy. Do what challenges you. Do what pushes you. Do what makes you better.
I don't know what dream you have, but I can guarantee you that there's somebody in the hospital right now praying, begging God to have the opportunity that you have right now. Don't blow it. It is time to go from mediocre to meteoric. It is time to go from being counted out to being counted on.
An hour lost today is an hour lost forever.
In life, there's no timeout. You can't raise your hand and stop the clock. It doesn't happen. So instead, I recommend you learn how to flip that switch when you face something that is overwhelming or challenging. You flip that switch that says, go time.
If you want to be a champion, if you want to be successful, you've got to live an active life. You've got to live an active plan. You've got to attack the day. You've got to win the day. And you've got to stack those wins to a point of where winning is just who the you are. It's time to take control. It's time to make a plan. It's time to execute on that plan.
You got to get gritty, man. You got to develop some dog in you. You got to get messed up sometime. You got to get dirty. You got to get your feelings hurt. You got to get disappointed. You got to get told no. But in order to get the life of convenience, you got to have a very uncomfortable life. You got to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
It is the most maddening thing, and yet it fills the letters and dispatches in almost every conflict that has ever been waged. Out of fear, out of laziness, out of poor management, a general just won't get their troops moving. It's what they trained for their whole lives, to fight. And when the moment comes, they're slow. In the American Civil War, General George McClellan, for instance, seemed utterly incapable of getting to the fight quickly, to the complete exasperation of everyone who worked with him. Joking to his wife after visiting the general in the field, Lincoln poked fun at his parked commander. "We are about to be photographed and be photographed as we can sit still long enough," he said. "I feel General M. should have no problem." Only after repeated prods from Lincoln, by sharp sticks, one of his secretaries said, did McClellan finally begin to move against Lee in 1862, taking 9 days to cross the Potomac. "He's got the slows," Lincoln said in frustration. McClellan was a brilliant soldier, but groaning under the weight of his baggage train, his conservatism, his entitlements, his paranoia, and his precaution, he was constitutionally unable to do things quickly, to act urgently, to care about the people waiting on him. Worse, when he did move against the enemy, it was only half-heartedly, and he often stopped short, as he did after Antietam, when he had landed a serious blow on Lee's army, but declined to follow it up. He had all the resources, all the talent, all the manpower. His heart just wasn't in it. He was courageous under fire, sure, but not courageous enough to start or finish a battle he knew he might lose. He wasn't disciplined enough to push himself. In the end, war, as well as life, is about getting up and going, about diving in, even it's scary or hard or uncertain. Military commanders speak of the value of celerity, moving with swiftness and aggressiveness. On the wall in the kitchen at Per Se, one of the best restaurants in the world, is the motto, a sense of urgency. The other, more practical word for this is hustle. Whether in business or in sports or combat, all the greats have it. Those who don't, we lament what could have been. Inevitably, The person who chooses when to try and when not to is liable to choose incorrectly and betray their team, as Manny Machado did in a National League Championship Series game in 2018. I'm not the type of player that's going to be Johnny Hustle, Machado told reporters after being thrown out half jogging after hitting a ball deep in the hole to shortstop and run down the line and slide to first base. That's just not my personality. That's not my cup of tea. That's not who I am. Imagine what Lou Gehrig would have thought about that. Always run them out. You never can tell was the commandment of the Yankees clubhouse. A great player shouldn't even need to be reminded of this. It should be in their blood. There's no excuse for a player not hustling, Gehrig would say. I believe every player owes it to himself, his club, and to the public to hustle every minute he is on the ball field. If you're not a person who hustles, who are you? Where does that leave the people counting on you? Although Machado signed a huge contract the next year in free agency, it wasn't with the Yankees, who were his first choice. The team's owner explained why. Not hustling ain't going to sell where we play baseball. It's easy to judge and to criticize as a fan, but that's not the only role that sports, or the study of warfare, has to play in our lives. This should serve as a mirror. There is a bit of McClellan in all of us, a bit of Machado in all of us. We get tired, we get scared, we know it's going to be hard, we get entitled and vain, we don't see the point, we don't want to look foolish. We have to push through that. You may lose battles, Napoleon said, but never lose a minute to sloth. Few of us hustle as much as we could. Are you someone whom colleagues and clients can count on to be there when they need you? Or will they have to prod? Will they have to beg? Will they have to repeat again and again the urgency of the situation? And what will it say about you if they do? So let's push ourselves to be better, to get after it. Hustle because we care about the game, because we care about the cause. We hustle because you never know when it will make a difference, when someone might be watching, when it might be our last try, when the slows might cost us everything. We should always run them out. Run, period, because it's who we are.